This final set of practices, called pressing for evidence-based explanations, is used near the end of a unit. One of the practices involves students developing a final set of claims about the anchoring event and learning how to use evidence to support those claims. The other practice asks students to create a final explanatory model in both drawn and written forms that integrates ideas from multiple activities and readings throughout the unit. These two practices can be used in either order, depending upon how you'd like to coordinate students' intellectual work.
We're going to write a final explanation today, so I want you to think of 5 things that you would need to include, at least 5 that you would need to include to make that a really good explanation of the hare population. And let's make our brainstorm list right here. Well, let's just take 2 more minutes here. I see a lot of people using their notes from the presentations yesterday. That's a great resource.
Damn it.
We have a list here of some of the things that you think should be included in the final explanation. And we're going to talk about this in a minute after we hear from the last group who hasn't shared their research yet. But before we do that, I just have a question that I want you to turn and talk to a neighbor about, which is, you just said all of these things would need to be included in an explanation. And I'm curious how that compares to your original hypothesis that your group made. So let's just turn and talk about that for 30 seconds. Go. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I heard some of you say this. What was my original hypothesis? Okay, so if you don't remember at this point, we have been looking back at our posters and we've been comparing it to our hypothesis. But I understand that sometimes we forget what we originally thought because we've done so much other thinking between then and now. But is there anybody willing to comment on that right now, how their original hypothesis is similar or different to this list?
My hypothesis is similar to this list by we both have predation in common, but in order for a good hypothesis, I think we should add all the factors.
Okay, so if he's saying his original one included this, but he thinks a good one, like we just said, would include all of these here, and so we need to make our checklist for our final explanation. So we started that for the entry question. But so today you will work with your group to explain why the hare population undergoes the following changes over the 35-year period. Actually today I printed out a graph that was zoomed in, so it's just an 18-year period. But we need to make a checklist of all the things we're going to include. And what I noticed is that a lot of you used yesterday's presentations as your main source of information to make this checklist. But what I also noticed is that I didn't see a lot of people using evidence from their summary chart from all the activities that we've done in their checklist. So what I'd like to do is take about 1 more minute for you to look back for your summary chart, talk to somebody next to you, see what you can figure out that we haven't included yet. If we look through the why. We can definitely maybe some of our other things like Did you find something missing? You look through your summary chart, all parts of it. This list here, I'm going to transfer it if you think it matches, if it's something that we have to include in our final explanation. If it is, I'll put it here, and that means we will all be including those in our final explanation. So let's start with birth rate. What do you mean by birth rate?
Reproduction.
So Alan says it means reproduction. Does everybody agree?
Yes.
So these two go together?
Yeah.
All right, so the reproduction or birth rate of what?
Hares.
Okay, so Elpidio wants to talk about the hare mortality rate. Is the hare reproduction rate the only kind of reproduction rate that matters here?
No.
What else matters? Okay, lynx reproduction rate. Carbon and nitrogen cycle. We can discuss at your tables how you're going to include that. Okay, and Elpidio, can you explain the last one, please? What do we mean by energy?
No. Oh. Shut up, she asked me.
Okay, use respectful language, please.
She actually did something.
Okay, Alan, stop. Go ahead, Elpidio.
Man, they're stupid.
Elpidio.
Energy, like the amount of energy it needs to take in and how much it has to work for it. Like it's different for the hair and its predator.
Okay, so kind of like a balance of energy, what it's using energy for, where the energy comes from.
Yes.
It's food.
Yes.
Okay, and then finally, I think that there's just one more kind of idea that we talked about in this activity, the deer population simulation, that I think is related to all of these, but it's not the actual term kind of concept that we've shared yet, which is carrying capacity.
Dang it, I was gonna say that.
You said it?
I was gonna say it.
Okay. So I want you to look at your ecosystem model. That's the one that you cut out the pictures and looked for connections for. See if there's anything that you want. See if there's anything that you want to add or revise. Do that first. Then work with your group to make a new explanation of why the hare population goes through the cycle. And it says 35. I'll change it to 18 years because I wanted to provide you a zoomed-in graph so it'd be easier to label. So I'm going to label the graph to show what is happening to the hares and then write a full explanation beneath your graph.
It's not increasing or decreasing at that point.
No, it's at the highest point. It's at the highest
Well, it
point.
depends on if you're looking here or here.
I'm looking at right here, just right here.
Okay, so why is it at the highest point then? It's at its highest point because?
Capacity. Carrying capacity. Is it? Do you agree, group?
Yes.
Gonna believe this is not
So should I write?
right here. Right, neutral because neutral. Yeah, right here. The point is right there. The highest point.
It's right
So you
here.
could say it's
We're not looking at this.
It's at its highest
We're not
point.
looking at that.
Okay.
So
Looking at
neutral.
that point.
How do you spell neutral?
N-E-U-T-R-A-L.
Because carrying capacity.
This is its carrying capacity up here?
Yes.
It seems like it because it keeps going.
Yeah, it doesn't go over.
It doesn't go over it.
What do we
Wait,
know?
hold on. No. Should this be the carrying? Because like it goes over, so it's over the limit that it goes down.
Okay, so we're saying this is over the limit of what the...
The carrying capacity should be.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
50.
Okay,
50 grand.
So you can add that to your explanation here so
50.
that we get here and we've gone past the carrying capacity.
So this is,
say
the carrying
pass.
capacity was like right here, and we went over when we said like right
Say
here. Right?
Okay, so you
neutral.
can add that as part of your
Pass.
explanation here.
Passes carrying capacity.
I want to spend most of our time today actually working on the final explanation, but I do want to have a few of you share out what you think is the most important part of the explanation and why. And I didn't talk to Justin about this ahead, but actually I was curious if you could share why you had a hard time choosing. Okay, so let's listen to Jasmine, please.
Because like I thought that there wasn't just like one important factor, like there was a lot, and I can choose from them.
Okay, so she's saying we have so many important factors and it's hard to choose. But then as I came around and talked to some of you, you said, well, I'm going to pick this one because it seems to affect a whole bunch of the other things, like you were looking for connections. And so, well, Peter, I think you told me something like that. Could you share what you said?
Yeah. That stress is very important because like it derives from many things like predation and other stuff, and it also has like it causes stuff. So
Okay. Like what stuff?
stuff like they die.
Okay, yeah, so it causes actually an increase in the mortality rate. So Elpidio's kind of central organizing idea that he's thinking about is stress for the hares. And then I heard a few of you talk about some other really important ones that you want to mention. So could somebody share another thing that they thought was the most important factor?
I thought that predation was the most important because when the predators eat so many of the hares, they're gonna go below carrying capacity, and if the predators didn't eat any of the hares, they'd go over.
Okay, so he's thinking about really the predators and how that relates to the carrying capacity. So you'll have your graph here. I want you to start by labeling the graph, and then use as many of the items from the checklist as you can. And then I want you to look for connections, like Elpidio was saying, which things seem to go together. Okay, so you'll label your graph and look for things that go together, seem to be cause and effect or connected to each other.
Then results again.
Not able to reduce.
Food quality.
Okay, so you're talking about the carbon cycle. The carbon is given to the plants here, and then that availability of carbon is like the
Increases energy for
Okay, so like, is there as much carbon available here for the hair as here?
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's just stress.
Video, could you just say, can you do it on camera, just say about this, how all those little extra bunnies increase the stress on the plant?
Why do we care about it?
Was that your theory? Or was it? But can you tell me what your theory was on camera?
Well, like if they don't have enough carbon and nitrogen, they don't have enough carbon and nitrogen in them, that's the nutrients they need, they're gonna have to start eating for the food. So like, let's say there's a mother that has her newborns, and she has to go out and get those nutrients, but there's competition.
So she might not get enough food in her, and if she doesn't have enough energy, she won't be able to produce breast milk for her young, and that causes high mortality rate if the babies don't get enough food.
At the end of this lesson, students had completed a group explanation that incorporated more than a dozen big science ideas. They had also created final models that reflected more systems-level thinking. But Bethany also asked her students to do two things as individuals that she would evaluate and grade. The first was an analysis of how their initial explanation had changed and what ideas or evidence had caused them to revise their thinking. This student's response states why the original explanation was changed. It links together the ideas of density-dependent limiting factors, predation, plants directly influencing the reproduction rate of hares, competition, and the transfer of energy in ecosystems. The second was to answer a series of questions about a second ecosystem in which a new species was being introduced. The ecosystem was Yellowstone National Park, and the new species was the wolf. Students were asked to respond to a variety of questions and to create different types of models to explain their thinking. The assessments were demanding intellectually, but Bethany had spent a great deal of targeted time throughout the unit focusing students on the most important concepts about ecosystem behavior, and provided many opportunities for her students to reason about the intersection of their ideas and the science.